the previous lesson about the risk management process, we have reached the stage of decision taking about the acceptability or tolerance of risk. In this lesson, we are going to look at risk treatment measures for those risks that are not considered as acceptable according to the pre-established risk criteria of an organization. As we saw before, risk criteria always includes applicable laws, regulations and standards, as these are precious tools to help define minimum limits. Most requirements in safety standards have been set as risk treatment measures and should be considered during the design stage of the product and its information for use. The objective of risk treatment is to have control on and modify identified risks that are not considered as acceptable. This can be achieved in different ways. Eliminate hazards when possible, or modify risks, either reducing the likelihood of an accident, modify the design of the product, or reducing the severity of the consequence in case of an accident, providing padding in case of an impact. Risk treatment has different levels of intervention strategies with different levels of effectiveness, passive strategies and active strategies, or a combination of both. They can be implemented at the design level or during use. And they include a range of different measures to avoid risks, like eliminate hazard if feasible and still keep the purpose of the product. If with no speed you have no swing. Or mitigate or reduce the risk, like using distance, for instance, the distance between grips to prevent children from proceeding in a climbing net, or separation with a barrier to reduce the risk of falling, or reduce the magnitude of exposure, for instance using a protective helmet or having impact attenuating surface on a playground. You can also transfer the risk, the responsibility of the risk, by communicating. You rely on consumer behavior. You communicate with warnings, with instructions, and you will transfer the responsibility of risk to the consumer. And finally, you can accept the risk, either doing nothing else or with a contingency plan. For instance, emergency procedures, easy access to hospitals. These are all part of the risk management process. Passive strategies are those that do not require an action from individual users to be effective. Typically, these are design modifications to the product that will have a collective effect on all exposed individuals. It gives the product inherent safety by design, and it should be the first aim, in particular when it concerns children. Active strategies are those that require individual action to be effective. Typically, they rely on individual behavior and need to be supported by education, training, information. Still, there is no guarantee that the user will understand it, see it, learn or apply correctly the instructions or the knowledge. We can also have a combination of passive and active strategies. For instance, in a pushchair, it may have all the safety features and it will be provided with a well-designed harness to retain the child and prevent a fall, and it will also be provided with instructions for use. This is the passive part. But for the harness to be effective, the carer must know that the harness has to be fastened, how to use it correctly and use it. After implementing all the risk measures, like inherent safe design, safeguards or protective devices, information for use, like instructions and warnings, a new risk assessment is necessary until the risk is considered as acceptable. So you have implemented all the risk treatment and you have to go back to the risk assessment and check again if the risk is now acceptable. So we can see why risk management is a dynamic process, as it has to continually be monitored and give room and rise for changes on your product. You can find more info on this process in ISO/IEC Guide 51, Safety Aspects Guidelines for their inclusion in standards. So, as key issues for this lesson, remember, risk treatment includes passive and active strategies. Passive strategies are more effective as they are usually implemented at the design level and benefit all users. It is not always possible to treat risk with inherent safe design. Combined strategies can be very effective if well communicated to involve the user in the process. Active strategies require individual active action and are complementary and equally important. They include training, product information and communication with consumers about residual risks. We will deal with risk communication in the next lesson.